use the days when I pre-film these because I don't want to be completely wrong, but I'm almost positive this is going to be day 3 of Vlogmas. Today, staying on our little Christmas theme here, we're going to read A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Now listen, I had a whole setup planned for this, okay, where I was going to like read the book down so you could see the book and you could do whatever with the book and like you wouldn't even see my face. However, the lighting in this room is not conducive for that. I'm gonna try that again when it's like more natural lighting, or like maybe I'll put a lamp over there or something, a ring light. I'm gonna try and figure out the lighting situation, but as it was, all you could see was a shadow of the camera and my like wonky ass setup. So we're gonna do this because I think this is just gonna give you a better overall visual. I even put nails on for this. I'm also testing a nail glue. This is like the TikTok viral like nail glue from Sally's right now. This is also, you guys probably can tell because there are other videos that I look exactly the same in. I'm pre-filming. I'm on vacation. Well, not right now, but I'm going through finals and stuff and graduating and everything, so I'm trying to get Vlogmas prepped. I'm not going to do all of the prep. I will be filming and uploading stuff like in real time, but a lot of it will be prepped. So I hope you guys are enjoying Vlogmas. If you don't celebrate Christmas or any holidays this time around, this time of the year, I hope you are enjoying December and the videos nonetheless. If you do not celebrate Christmas, I hope you are having an amazing holiday regardless. And let's get right into the book. First of all, the absolute front cover of this book is stunning. The artwork in this book is so beautiful. So this is a book I thought from my childhood, but I'm honestly not sure. I did go get this out of my childhood home. So let's crack on in here. So this is the first page. We've got some carolers, just chilling little kid carolers. And then here's, oh, that's so pretty. Look at the little towns, the townhouse there, or like the town, city center, whatever I'm trying to say. And then, oh, there's Harold. Let's see. Oh God, can you see him? There's Scrooge right there in the corner. Okay. A Christmas Carol. Normally this kind of stuff is like signed by the family member that gave it to me, so kind of odd for me that it's not signed. We've got Scrooge, of course, our main character. This book is kind of long, so I need to kind of get moving here. Alright. Stave 1. Marley's Ghost. Marley was dead to begin with. There was no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, and the undertaker. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. Did Scrooge know he was dead? Of course he did. Scrooge had been his partner for I don't know how many years. He was Marley's sole executor, his sole administrator, his sole friend, and sole mourner. Scrooge had never painted out old Marley's name. There it stood years afterwards above the warehouse door, Scrooge and Marley. Oh, but Scrooge was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, a squeezing, a wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. Once upon a time, of all the good days in the year, on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. It was cold, bleak, biting weather. The fog poured in at every chink and keyhole. The door of Scrooge's office was open, that he might keep a watchful eye on his clerk, Bob Cratchit, who was copying letters in a dismal little cell beyond. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle," cried the cheerful voice from the doorway. "Bah," said Scrooge. "Humbug." It was Scrooge's nephew, who had so hated himself walking that he was in all aglow. "A Christmas, a humbug, Uncle, you don't mean that." "I do," said Scrooge. "Merry Christmas. What right have you to be merry? You're poor enough." "Come then," returned the nephew. "What right do you have to be dismal? You're rich enough." Scrooge, having no better answer, said "bah" again. again and followed it with a humbug. Don't be cross, Uncle. What else can I be? What's Christmas to you but a time for finding yourself a year older, but not an hour richer? If I could work my will, every idiot who says Merry Christmas should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with the stake of a holly and through his heart. Don't be angry, Uncle. Come, dine with us tomorrow. Good afternoon, said Scrooge. I'm sorry with all my heart to find you so resolute. Still, a Merry Christmas, Uncle. Good afternoon, said Scrooge, and a Happy New Year. Scrooge's uncle left the room without an angry word. The clerk, as he let the nephew out, let the two other gentlemen in. Scrooge and Marley's, I believe, one of them said. Have I the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley? Mr. Marley's been dead these 7 years, Scrooge replied. He died 7 years ago this very night. We have no doubt, the gentleman said, that his generosity is well represented by his surviving partner. Scrooge frowned. At this festive season, Mr. Scrooge, the gentleman continued, we try to make some provision for the poor. Are there no prisons? Said Scrooge. Plenty of prisons, said the gentleman. And workhouses? Demanded Scrooge. Are they still in operation? They are, returned the gentleman. Oh, said Scrooge, I was afraid from what you said that something had occurred to stop them. Nevertheless, returned the gentleman, a few of us endeavor to raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink. What shall we put you down for? That's the nephew, I believe. Okay. Hold on. Nothing, Scrooge replied. I don't make merry at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I support the places I have mentioned. Those who are badly off must go there. Many can't go there, and many would rather die. If they would rather die, said Scrooge, then they better do it, and decrease the surplus population. Good afternoon. Seeing clearly that their interview was over, the gentleman withdrew. At length the hour of closing had arrived. With the ill will, Scrooge admitted to the fact that there was an expectant clerk, who instantly snuffed out his candle. You'll want all day tomorrow, I suppose, Scrooge said. The clerk observed that it was only once a year. A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December, said Scrooge, but I suppose you must have the whole day. Be here all the earlier the next morning. Look at him, looking all negative Nelly over there with the little kids caroling. What a negative little Nelly he was. That's an insane image. Okay. The office was closed in a twinkling. Scrooge walked out with a growl. He took his melancholy dinner in his usual melancholy tavern, and having read all the newspapers and reviewed his bank book, he went home to bed. Now it was the fact that there was nothing all that particular about the knocker at Scrooge's door. Scrooge had seen it night and morning, the whole of the time he had lived there. Yet Scrooge, having his key in his lock, suddenly saw not a knocker, but Marley's face. Oh, there's Marley right there. It was not angry or furious, but looked simply as Marley used to look. The hair was curiously stirred, as if by a breath or hot air, and though the eyes were open, they were perfectly motionless. As Scrooge looked fixedly on this phenomenon, it was the knocker yet again. To say that he was not startled would be untrue, but he put his hand upon the key, and it turned sturdily, walked in, and lighted his candle. He did pause before shutting the door, and he did look cautiously behind it, but there was nothing on the back of the door except the screws and nuts that held the knocker on, he said. So he said, pooh-pooh, and closed it with a bang. The sound traveled through the house like thunder, but Scrooge was not a man to be frightened by echoes. He walked across the hall and up the stairs, trimming his candle as he went. Sitting room, bedroom, storeroom, all were as they should be. I'm telling you, the pictures in this book are insane. Nobody under the table, nobody under the sofa, nobody under the bed, and nobody under the closet. Quite satisfied, Scrooge closed his door and double-locked himself in. Thus secured against surprise, he put on his dressing gown, slippers, and a nightcap, and sat down before the fire to make his gruel. As he sat back in the chair, his glance rested upon a used bell that hung in the room. As he looked, he saw the bell began to swing. It swung as softly at first, but soon it began to ring loudly, and so did every bell in the house. The bells ceased as they had begun together. They were succeeded by a clanking noise deep down below. The cellar door flew open with a booming sound, and then Scrooge heard the noise much louder, on the floors below, then coming up the stairs, then coming straight towards his door. "It's humbug still," he said. "I won't believe it." His color changed, though, when without a pause it came through the heavy door and passed into the room. The same face, that very same face. Marley stood before him in his pigtail waistcoat, tights, and boots. The chains he carried were clasped around his middle. It wound around him like a tail, and it was made of cash boxes and keys, padlocks, ledgers, and heavy purses wrought with steel. Though Scrooge looked at the phantom through and through, he was still incredulous. Look at him looking terrified over there. I adore this book, by the way. I think it's amazing, and I think every movie that's been made or like play has been made of it is fantastic. "How now?" said Scrooge. "What do you want with me?" "Much," Marley's voice said. "No doubt about it." "Who are you?" Scrooge demanded. "In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley." Can you sit down?" Scrooge asked doubtfully. "I can." "Do it then." The ghost sat down on the opposite side of the fireplace. "You don't believe in me," he observed. "I don't," said Scrooge. "Why do you doubt your senses?" "Because," Scrooge said, "a little thing affects them. A slight disorder of the stomach makes them cheats. You may be undisguised in a bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of an underdone potato. There's more than gravy than of grave about you, whatever you are." At this, the spirit raised a frightful cry and shook its chains. Scrooge fell upon his knees and clasped his hands before his face. "Mercy," he said, "dreadful apparition, why do you trouble me?" "Man of the worldly mind," replied the ghost, "do you believe in me or not?" "I do," said Scrooge. "I must. But why do spirits walk the earth, and why do they come to me?" "It is required of every man," the ghost returned, "that the spirit within him should walk abroad among his fellow men. If that spirit goes not forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death." You are fettered," said Scrooge, trembling. "Tell me why." "I wear the chain I forged in life," replied the ghost. "I made it link by link and yard by yard." Scrooge trembled more and more. "Would you know," pursued the ghost, "the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? It was full as heavy and as long as this 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have labored mightily on its sense." Scrooge glanced about, expecting to find himself surrounded by some 50 or 60 phantoms of iron cable, but he could see nothing. "Jacob," he said imploringly, "old Jacob Marley, good Lord, tell me more. Speak comfort to me, Jacob." "I have none to give," the ghost replied, "nor can I tell you what I would like to. A very little more is permitted to me. I cannot rest, I cannot stay, I cannot linger anywhere." "But you were always a good man of business, Jacob," faltered Scrooge. "Business!" cried the ghost, wringing its hands again. "Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, benevolence were all my business." It held upon its chains an arm length and flung heavily upon the ground again. "Hear me," cried the ghost. "My time is nearly gone. I am here to warn you tonight that you yet a chance of escaping my fate, a chance and hope of procuring Ebenezer. You were always a good friend to me," said Scrooge. "Thank you. You will be haunted," resumed the ghost, "by 3 spirits." Scrooge's countenance fell. I think I'd rather not," he said. "Without their visits," said the ghost, "you cannot hope to shun the path I tread. Look to see me no more, for your own sake. Remember what has passed between us." The apparition began to walk backward from Scrooge. At the very step it took, the window raised itself a little, so that when the spectre reached it, it was wide open. The spectre, after listening for a moment, floated out upon the bleak dark night. Scrooge followed to the window, desperate in his curiosity. He looked out. The air was filled with phantoms. restless haste, and moaning as they went. Every one of them wore chains like Marley's ghost. Whether these creatures faded into the mist, or the mist enshrouded them, he could not tell. But they and their spirit voices faded together. Scrooge closed the window and examined the door by which the ghost had entered. It was still double-locked, and the bolts were undisturbed. He tried to say "bah humbug," but stopped at the first syllable. Much in need of repose, he went straight to bed and fell asleep at once. So right here is Marley, and then there's Scrooge, and here's the window, obviously. Stave 2. When Scrooge awoke, it was so dark that the first of three spirits is the name of it. When Scrooge awoke, it was so dark that he could scarcely distinguish the transparent window from the opaque walls of his chamber. The chimes of a neighboring church struck the 4 quarters, and Scrooge listened for the hour. As the deep, hollow bell sounded midnight, light flashed upon in the room. The curtains of his bed were drawn. Scrooge, staring up, found himself face to face with an unearthly visitor. It was a strange figure, like a child, yet like an old man, diminished to a child's proportions. Its hair was white as if with age, and yet the face had not a wrinkle. From the crown of its head there sprung a bright, clear jet of light, and it wore a great extinguisher for a cap. "Are you the spirit, sir, whose coming was foretold to me?" asked Scrooge. "I am." The voice was soft and gentle. "Who and what are you?" Scrooge demanded. "I am the ghost of Christmas past." "Long past?" inquired Scrooge. "No, your past." Scrooge then made bold to inquire what business brought him there. "Your welfare," said the ghost. It put out its strong hand and clasped him gently by the arm. "Rise and walk with me." Grasp, though gentle, was not to be resisted. Scrooge rose. They passed through the hall and stood upon an open country road. The city had nearly entirely vanished. "Good heaven," said Scrooge, clasping his hand together. "I was bred in this place. I was a boy here." "You recollect the way?" inquired the spirit. "I remember it," Scrooge said with fervor. "I could walk it blindfolded." They walk along the road, Scrooge recognizing every gate and post and tree. I'm so sorry. Some shaggy ponies now were seen trotting toward them with the boys upon their back, who called the other boys in the country gigs and carts. Wow, I can't read now. "These are but shadows of things that have been," said the ghost. "They have no awareness of us." The travelers came on, and as they came, Scrooge knew and named every one of them. He heard them give each other Merry Christmases. They parted there for their homes. "The school is not quite deserted," said the ghost. "A solitary child is still left there." Scrooge said he knew it, and he sobbed. They left the high road and approached the mansion of the dull red brick. It was a large house, but one of broken fortunes. The spacious offices were little used, and their walls damp and mossy, their windows broken. They went, the ghost and Scrooge, to a long bare room. The lonely boy was reading read near a feeble fire. Scrooge wept to see his poor forgotten self as he used to be. "I wish," Scrooge muttered, putting his hands in his pockets after drying his eyes with his cuff. "What's the matter?" asked the ghost. "There was a boy singing a Christmas carol at my door last night. I should have given him something, that's all." The ghost smiled thoughtfully and waved its hand. "Let us see another Christmas." Scrooge's former self grew larger at the words, and the room became a little darker and more dirty. The panels shrunk, the windows cracked, the fragments of plaster fell out of the ceiling. The door opened. A little girl came darting in, and little baby Scrooge makes me so sad. And put her arms around the boy's neck. "I have come to bring you home, dear brother," said the child, clasping their tiny hands. "Home, little fan," returned the boy. "Yes," said the child, "home forever and ever. Father is much kinder than he used to be. He spoke so gently to me that one night I was not afraid to ask him once more if you might come home, and he said yes, you should, and sent me the coach to bring you." She clapped her hands and laughed. "Always a delicate creature," said the ghost, "but she had a big heart." "So she had," cried Scrooge. "She died a woman," said the ghost, "and had Scrooge returned. True, said the ghost. Your nephew. Scrooge seemed uneasy and answered briefly, yes. Although they had only just left the school behind them, they were now in busy thoroughfares of a city. Here, too, it was Christmas time again, but it was evening and the streets were lighted up. The ghost stopped at a warehouse door and asked Scrooge if he knew it. I know it. I was apprenticed here. They went in. The sight of the old gentleman sitting behind a desk, Scrooge cried in great excitement. Why, it's old Fezziwig. Bless its heart, it's Fezziwig alive again. Old Fezziwig laid down his pen and looked up at the clock, which pointed at the hour of 7. He rubbed his hands, adjusted his capacious waistcoat, and called out in a comfortable, rich, jovial voice, "You-hoo there, Ebenezer." Scrooge's former self, now a grown young man, came briskly in, accompanied by his fellow apprentice. "You-hoo, my boys, no more work tonight. Christmas Eve, Ebenezer. Let's have the shutters up," he cried. Skipping down from the high desk. "Clear away, my lads, and let's have lots of room here. Hilly-ho, Dick. Cheery up, Ebenezer. Clear away." It was done in a minute. Then came in a fiddler with music book, and came in Mrs. Fezziwig, one vast, substantial smile, and then came 3 Mrs. Fezziwigs, beaming and lovable. In came all the young men and women employed by the business, and they came one after another, some shyly, some boldly, some gracefully, some awkwardly, some pushing, some pulling, and they all came. Anyhow, and everyhow. There were dances and more dances, there was cake and mince pies, but the greatest effort of the evening came when old Fezziwig stood down to dance with Mrs. Fezziwig, and they were joined by 3 or 4 and 20 pair of partners. Okay. When the clock struck 11, the domestic ball broke up. During the whole of this time, Scrooge acted like a man out of his wits. His heart and soul were in the scene. He remembered everything and joined everything. It was not until now he recalled the ghost, and became conscious of what was looking full upon him. A small matter, the ghost said, to make these folks so happy. It isn't that, Scrooge said. It isn't that, Spirit. He had the power to render us happy or unhappy, make our service a pleasure or a toil. The happiness he gives is quite as great as it cost a fortune. He felt the Spirit's glance and stopped. "What's the matter?" asked the ghost. "Nothing particular," said Scrooge. "I should like to be able to say a word to my clerk just now. That's all." His former self turned down the lamps, and Scrooge and the ghost stood side by side in the open air. "My time grows short," observes the Spirit. "Quick." Again, Scrooge saw himself. He was older now, a man in the prime of his life. His face, not the harsh and rigid lines of later years, but had begun to wear the signs of care and of ours. He was not alone, but sat by the side of a fair girl whose eyes there were tears. "It matters a little," she said softly. "To you, very little. Other idol has replaced me." "What idol has replaced you?" he rejoined. "A golden one. I have seen your nobler aspirations fall off one by one until master passion gain and grosses you." "Even so," he retorted, "I am not changed towards you." She shook her head. "Our contract is an old one, made when we were both poor. You are changed. If this had never been between us." The girl said, looking steadily upon him, "Tell me, would you seek me out and try to win me now?" "You think not. I would gladly think otherwise if I could," she answered. "But if you were free today, I can believe you would choose me, a dowerless girl." Look at this cute picture. Oh my god. "I do not, and so I release you. You may have the pain of this briefly, and then you will dismiss it in the recollection of it as an unprofitable dream. May you be happy in the life you have chosen." She left him, and they parted. "Spirit," said Scrooge, "show me no more. Conduct me home. Why do you delight to torture me?" "I told you these were the shadows of things that have been," said the ghost, "that they are what they are. Do not blame me." "Remove me," Scrooge exclaimed. "I cannot bear it. Take me back. Haunt me no longer." Scrooge absorbed that the Spirit's light was burning high and bright. He seized the extinguisher cap and pressed it down upon the Spirit's head. The Spirit dropped beneath it, so that the extinguisher covered the whole form. But though Scrooge pressed it down with all his force, he could not hide the light. He was conscious of being exhausted, and further, being in his own bedroom, he gave the cap a parting squeeze before he sank heavy into a sleep.